Today, we're jumping right into the brilliant, really intense, and tragically short final years of the great romantic poet Percy Bysshe Shelley. We're going to explore how, in this just stunning burst of creativity, he wrestled with life's biggest questions, love, death, and what it all means. His final works, they offer this profound vision, so let's get into it and try to unravel it.
So, let's start with a big question, one I'm sure you've thought about at some point. What is a soulmate? Seriously, think about it. Is it a person, your perfect match? Or is it something else, maybe an idea we chase our whole lives?
Well, for a poet like Percy Shelley, the answer was, it was a little more complicated than that. See, he wasn't really looking for a person to complete him. No, he was searching for an ideal, a perfect spiritual connection that maybe only exists in the imagination. And that right there, that's the key to unlocking his entire final vision.
And that search for the ideal, it brings us to our first part here. Love beyond this world. We're going to see how Shelley dove deep into this whole concept in one of his most personal and philosophical poems, Epipsychidion.
The title alone, it tells you pretty much everything. Epipsychidion. It comes from the Greek, and it literally means concerning the soul of the soul. Think about that. This wasn't just about finding another soul. It was about finding the very essence of a soul, a perfect spiritual twin.
So here's the thing about Shelley's core belief. He drew this really sharp line between what he saw as ordinary physical relationships and this higher spiritual love he was chasing. For him, true love was something pure, something eternal. It wasn't tied down by worldly stuff. It was a union of spirits, plain and simple.
Okay, so the crucial point is this. Shelley was convinced we are all searching for this kind of perfection. But, and this is a big but, he also kind of suspected that this ideal, it might not actually exist in the real world. So how do you get there? The only way to experience it, to really feel it, was through the power of imagination. Imagination was the bridge. But in the very same year that Shelley was writing about this perfect, imagined love, reality came crashing in. A truly devastating blow. And this forced his whole vision to evolve, which leads us right into our next section, how a soul becomes eternal. See, in 1821, the brilliant young poet John Keats died tragically in Rome. And this single event, it forced Shelley to slam on the brakes. He had to pivot from this abstract idea of a spiritual soulmate to the very raw, very concrete reality of death and loss.
And to try and process his grief, he wrote what many consider one of the greatest elegies in all of English literature, a poem called Adonais. Now that title is a direct nod to Adonis from Greek mythology, the beautiful young man whose tragic early death was mourned by the gods themselves. For Shelley, that's exactly who Keats was, a modern-day Adonis, a symbol of pure genius cut down way, way too soon.
This poem, it takes you on an absolutely incredible, emotional roller coaster. It starts with this deep, profound sorrow, where it feels like all of nature is mourning Keats. Then it shifts into real anger. Shelley actually blames harsh literary critics for contributing to his friend's decline. But it doesn't stay there. The poem then climbs to this beautiful, philosophical place of consolation.
And that's the ultimate message of the poem, right? It's this profound sense of comfort. Shelley basically argues that Keats isn't truly gone. Instead, his spirit has dissolved into the universe. He's become one with nature, with beauty, with this eternal spirit. True poets, Shelley says, they achieve a kind of immortality through their art.
So okay, we've got the ideal of love, and we've got the promise of immortality. But Shelley's vision, it wasn't complete yet, not by a long shot. There was one final, kind of mysterious piece to the puzzle. A poem that was left unfinished by his own untimely death.
Just look at this timeline for a second. The creative intensity here is just staggering. In a little over a year, he writes a masterpiece on ideal love, a legendary elegy on immortality, and then begins his final, haunting work, The Triumph of Life. It's unbelievable.
And this is where things take a sharp turn. Unlike the hopeful idealism we saw in the other poems, The Triumph of Life gives us a much darker, much more uncertain vision. It paints this picture of the world where a cold, relentless chariot, the chariot of life, just tramples everything in its path. It chains up even the greatest minds and spirits, and it leaves you questioning if true freedom or meaning can ever really be achieved.
So, what are we supposed to make of all this? You've got this search for the ideal, a vision of immortality, and then this final, darker question. Why does this whirlwind of creativity, this whole journey, still matter so much today? Well, it's because when you put them all together, these three poems give us a perfect snapshot of the human condition. They capture our deepest longings, don't they? That search for perfect love, the hope for some kind of meaning after we're gone, and, yeah, those nagging questions about what it all means in the end.
What we're really witnessing here is the evolution of a genius, a mind just working at incredible speed, wrestling with the most profound questions that all of us face, right up until the very, very end. It's this powerful and ultimately unfinished conversation with eternity itself.
And that leaves us with one last, really fascinating question to think about. Shelley spent his whole life chasing perfection, right? An ideal that was always just out of reach. So does the darker, unfinished nature of his final poem mean that, in the end, he realized the triumph of life was an illusion, something he could never quite capture?